Good evening. Good evening. Hey, how y'all doing tonight? How y'all doing? How y'all doing? I'm a few minutes late, but I was determined to come on here so we can chat and catch up. Welcome to Women Wealth Wednesday. I've got a really good topic for us today. I don't know, my computer seems a little unstable tonight, but I'm not really sure what's going on. Of course, we've had some chilly weather here in the Northeast. I have no idea what's going on with this weather, but welcome to Women Wealth Wednesday. I am your host, Dr. Gladys, Coach Gladys David, if you will. I also go by just Gladys. How about that? Tonight, we are talking about creative financing. No money, no problem. Creative ways women are funding deals. I thought about this topic, and everything I do is always coming from my program, and it's always coming from women that I talk to, not just in real estate investing, but also in just talking to agents as well. Money is always a topic, and many people, especially in investing, tell you that they can't afford to get into real estate investing because they don't have money, they lack credit issues. And I was like, well, why not? Let's just have a good conversation about this. And I really packed it into a couple of things. And we may have to have two parts because I have so much to cover in terms of being creative and how to get over the hurdle of not having money. Not having money should not really get in your way, but if that's really something that that's been holding you back, how about that? Holding you back. So let's get right into it, okay? If you think you need a bank account to invest in real estate, you don't, okay? Today, we're talking about creative financing, how women are funding deals with little or no money of their own. In our program, we talk about money issues. We talk about it. So if you are watching this on the live stream, let me know. And if you're watching it on a replay, but I want you to let me know, if you love to invest, but don't know how, if you want to invest, but don't have cash, let me know one way or the other, if that's your situation, because tonight I'm going to share not one, but two. If I can do both, I will. If not, then I'll make this a two-part. But one of the things I want to dive into with you, and I want to do a deep dive, I even have a PowerPoint presentation that I want to share with you, is I want to explain one of the creative ways that you can finance a deal, and it's called seller financing. Now, what is seller financing? If you've never heard of seller financing is the seller is acting as the bank. So I'll have a lot more to say about it in terms of breaking it down and who it is. But if you're meeting with a potential seller and you understand what the situation is, then that's what I'm talking about. If you've never done this before, then you're brand new. But those that have done some investing, seller financing is when the seller acts as the bank. Instead of going to the traditional bank as the traditional lender to get the money, then that seller is the one that you're making instantly. It is a structured deal. It's legal. It's not illegal. It's a structured way of doing this. And according to the terms that you both agree on, the interest rate, the monthly payments, the length of the loan, so on and so forth. Now, what are the benefits of this? I want to give you three benefits, okay? Number one, it lowers the upfront cost, right? It often little or no get into a seller financing, depending on the price point of the home. I myself had a seller financing deal that I will share with you. It's actually a property that I lived in, and it was in Jersey City. Of course, that's where I hailed from before I moved to South Jersey. But I want to share with you that's one of the reasons, lower upfront costs. The second one is faster closings, right? Because there's no bank involved. There's fewer hoops. It's usually an attorney or a creative financing company, a CPA, can create the agreement between you, the buyer, and the seller. That allows you to come to an agreement of the minds on how you're going to structure that deal. And pretty much that's it. That's it. The third item I want to tell you why it's beneficial for women investors is flexible terms. You negotiate the interest rate and payment schedule. Now, see, that's great. Before I got here, I was watching the news, and there's a debate whether or not we're going to go from a 30-year to a 50-year mortgage. If there's ever been a time where you should consider seller financing. It is now. It is really now. In investments, it has always been around, but we're living in some really different times here in the United States. But I just wanted to say that a 50-year mortgage is not attractive to me at all, but to each its own. I don't want to digress into that. But let me open my PowerPoint that I want to share with you with regards to a seller financing, because you will find that very, very helpful. And you will find it that once you see it on paper, because some people are visuals, right? You're a visual learner and you're not quite seeing it that way. So I get it. I get it. So I will help you understand. I have two here. One is going to be a subject to, and the other one is going to be seller financing. So bear with me as I get my logistics together. So let me give you the background story of the first example of a seller financing situation. Okay. This is a 2-family house in Jersey City. And the seller owned the property, but him and his partner got into a disagreement, if you will. One owner moved out of the state, and so therefore leaving the second owner vulnerable to not being able to, even though it was a 2-family house, he just didn't want to come out of pocket on his own, because I guess they had some kind of agreement. When I first moved into the property, he understood that I was a realtor investor and I was there for a short term. It was the situation why I was living in Jersey City anyway. So with that being said, the challenge was that, you know what, I wasn't there to buy the home outright. I was initially just going to rent. But over a period of time, it seemed like his financial distress became a situation for him. We had a really interesting conversation, and here's the solution that we came up with. The seller agreed to carry the note for anywhere from 5 to 10 years with a reasonable interest rate. I'm like, that's not bad, because you know what? After all, I'm living here anyway, and why not? I was inheriting a tenant that was already there before me, and I was going to be the owner of the owner's unit. So it made perfectly good sense. So we talked about moving forward with the deal. I'll break that down for you in a minute. Another situation was here in Camden, New Jersey. I actually met with a retired homeowner who wanted to downsize, but still wanted monthly income. So the solution that I offered was, you know, we can do seller financing with a 5-year balloon payment. Now, to others, that might not seem lucrative, but it actually makes sense. The seller received a steady monthly check, and I was able to invest the property without a real traditional mortgage. It's a win-win. It's a win-win for everyone, right? The other one was a property in Trenton, New Jersey. You know, as a young investor, I didn't always have a lot of cash flow to be able to do the type of things that I wanted to do, because I didn't want to do a 1 flip, 2 flip a year. I wanted to do multiple flips. In fact, I'd love to do multiple flips a month. So with that being said, this situation presented itself to me, and the seller agreed to short-term financing agreement, allowing me to be able to renovate the house to sell it within 12 months. And so that worked out really well for me as well. So I was able to profit from the flip, pay off the seller. I gained the experience and the credibility, and that allowed me to be able to get more deals. So more deals, right? So that gives me the credibility. And guess what? It didn't hit my credit. It didn't hit my own financing. And all it cost me was not just sweat equity, because I knew what I was doing, but it cost me nothing to be able to renovate it, because I just had to pay the contractor. So that made perfectly good sense. So let me share my screen with you so that you can see how this seller financing could possibly be something that you might consider for yourself. All right, let me see here. Share my screen. Share my screen. Share my screen. Okay. So, okay. So this, let me make this bigger because even I can't see it. So seller financing. So the seller financing works like this. I, the buyer, am paying the principal and the interest, the monthly payment to purchase the home, which gives the which gives the interest to the seller. So That's how my deal was structured. Okay. Don't get caught up in that. The numbers are coming. Okay. Okay. So you're buying a home directly from the seller. Instead of paying the bank, you're paying the seller in installments. The money is doing double duty, paying down the purchase price and rewarding the seller for financing you. I mean, it's really that simple, right? This isn't costing you anything at all. The key insights for the buyer: you're buying a home directly from the seller, but instead of paying the bank, you're paying the seller in installments. Okay. So you're just using it as an installment loan. Why am I frozen? Okay, here we go. Here's the numbers. That's what I was looking for. Here's the numbers. The purchase price, $200,000. A 10-year term, 5% interest rate, monthly payment, $2,121. So about $833 goes towards the principal, reducing that $200,000. And about $1,288 goes towards the interest goes to the seller. After all, that's the purpose of it being seller financing. The person still owns the home, but they're able to generate cash flow for themselves. Remember the situation I just shared with you. The individual in Camden wanted to retire but needed monthly income. So this is monthly cash flow to him. Okay. This usually only works when the house is paid off. Okay. With the cash flow that goes to them, because it will be another creative way of financing it. And we'll talk about something like that a little bit later on, where if the payment that you are actually creating covers the mortgage and then some of the expenses as well, there's not much cash flow left. But we'll talk about that. That's a different situation, more like a sub two. But in seller financing, usually the properties are mortgage free. Okay, at the end of the 10 years, the buyer has fully purchased the home and the seller has earned interest along the way. I think that's pretty clever. If you don't think that's clever, let me know why not in the chat, because to me, it's brilliant. Sometimes you may need to come up with a down payment. Sometimes you don't. It's all in a negotiation. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about negotiation, that it's a non-negotiable, that you have to learn how to negotiate. It doesn't matter if it's in real estate, on your career, your job. It's all part of what we do. Let me take a sip. I'm having ginger tea tonight because I tell you, not only is it cold, but we are experiencing some really weird weather. We're going from highs to lows, lows to high. But anyway, let me get a sip of my tea. All right. So as we talk about seller financing, here's a couple of things I want you to keep in mind. Okay. These are some of the tips that I want to share with you. You want to be transparent. Show the seller your plan for the property. Don't go in there and try and be sneaky and do something different, especially if you've never done this before. You want to do this with guidance, number one, but you also want to be transparent when you're doing it. If you've never done it, then I don't strongly suggest that you go out on your own. That's what mentorship is about. That's what we teach in She Invests Realty and She Rises Academy. We're actually on our final week. It's been 10 glorious weeks that I've been teaching to women, pouring into them. And it is so rewarding to see the growth. It is so rewarding to see where they were at week one to where they are now, coming to completion. But I digress. But I share this with you because I don't want you to take this, live Wednesday and then say you're going to go out and do seller financing tomorrow, because I taught you this. It takes a lot more, but I'm giving you tips on what you can do if money is not in your pipeline at this time. Number two, I want you to offer win-win terms. Think about the interest rate, the amortization period, and monthly payment that benefits both parties, both you and the seller. Okay. The third thing in tips for negotiating for seller financing is document everything. Okay. I said to you earlier today, it's not like, you and I are sitting here figuring this out on our own and it's a napkin agreement. No, 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 ma'am. Always use a lawyer to draft a formal promissory note. A couple $100 is not going to kill you when you're inheriting a very large property so that you can invest and grow your portfolio. So don't be cheap. All right. The fourth thing I want to share with you when you are negotiating your seller financing is consider creative add-ons. Sometimes a small upfront payment or offering to cover taxes and insurance can sweeten the deal. Now, especially here in New Jersey, we have something called PITI, which is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. I think is a curse and a blessing. It's great that we have taxes and insurance in it, but other states may not. So I have to preference that by sharing with you that I am very state specific when I say we have PITI. Other states may, but I don't want to speak for all other states. I have invested in other places where they don't include taxes and insurance. So I'm just sharing with you that in the state of New Jersey, it is the best to include the taxes because we don't have the most favorable when it comes to taxes. Our taxes are considered to be really on a high side. I think here in New Jersey, we have a running joke saying under 10,000 is considered affordable housing, right? So it's true. I mean, it's not unusual to pay more than $10,000 in taxes in the state of New Jersey. And if you are an investor, that's something that you want to consider because you want all in and see what your expenditures would be so that you are not putting out all your cash into a property. All right. So that's just something I wanted to put out there for you. Now, let me ask you, if you had an opportunity to pitch to seller financing to a homeowner tomorrow, what type of property would you target first? Is it the single family with the situation with the gentleman I talked to you about where he needed cash flow and we were able to negotiate a seller financing with a 5-year balloon payment? I don't know if many people know what a balloon payment is, but at the end of the 5-year, the whole house had to be paid off. Now, that's very simple. All you have to do is refinance, restructure that loan, and you're able to get it. Of course, in 5 years, if you don't qualify for a home after you have been assuming a mortgage payment on it, I have to look at you questionably because, I mean, it's something that you should be able to do. You're paying the original amount off. So that's a balloon payment to your lender, which is the seller. Okay. So that's what I'm talking about. 200,000 is a negotiated price that we talked about. Or would you consider the fixer upper that I talked to you about in Trenton? Just kind of let me know which one would you consider to be your first seller financing. I just gave you 3 different scenarios that I'm aware of in my own pipeline. Now, how this really works is like this. Principal payments. The portion of each payment goes towards to reduce the balance on the house of the purchase price. Now, when I said to you earlier, that's what that's going. So when we talked about the $200,000 and I said to you $833 was going towards that principal, then, each month you're going to see the balance drop by 833. But keep in mind, the interest is still accumulating. Have you ever taken the time to, if you own a home now, to go through your amortization of your loan, if you ever bought your first home and closed on it, and take some time to go through your closing papers? They actually break it down. And if you don't have it, go onto your statement for your lender and they can show you the amortization schedule of what it will look like and when that house will be fully paid off, right? So if you did a 10-year mortgage, it'll show you when you will be able to pay it off. So over the time, the buyer is building equity in the property, just like a traditional mortgage, okay? Now, the interest payments, this portion is the income for the seller, okay? Because the seller is acting like the bank. It's the seller's return for carrying the loan. I mean, no one's going to carry a loan for you, not a bank, not a seller, but it's similar to what a bank would earn on a traditional mortgage. That's why coming to an agreement on how much you want that interest rate to be. If you were to come across a 5% right now as an agreement, I mean, that's a bargain considering I think we're teetering at 6.32, depending on your credit score right now in traditional mortgage. So I would jump at that if I were you. Okay. So yes, part of the monthly payment is paying down the actual purchase price, which is the principal And and the part of the income is the interest for the seller. So that's a great deal. That's a very good deal. Now the taxes and insurance, well, that can fluctuate, right? Because our taxes in the state of New Jersey, they go up every year, but so does our insurance rate. But for the actual principal balance, we start at 200,000 if you didn't put a down payment. So we start there. If you put a down payment, it'll be less your down payment, less what you're paying monthly, and it's a sweet deal. I mean, it's pretty safe once you have it structured properly. The payments are usually made directly to either a financing company that's either held in escrow by the company or the attorney, and it's legit. You get a tax statement at the end of the year. It's nothing illegal about this, okay? So feel safe that it is safe for you to know that seller financing is very real. In fact, I share with you, if you ever done your taxes on your own, there's actually, if you like, for example, a software like TurboTax, there are certain lines when, you're going through a mortgage interest if you own your own home, and it has lines there if you had any seller financing interest. So it's very much legit. All right. So as we continue to forge ahead, I wanted to spend some time talking about another opportunity to talk about, and I want to pull up the notes on that one, and I have a PowerPoint for that one as well, because sometimes, again, you need a visual, okay? But it's I don't know how many of you are familiar with subject to, okay? Subject to deal is when a buyer purchases a property subject to the existing finances. I'll pause. Essentially, the buyer takes control of the property without assuming the mortgage. The loan stays in the seller's name, but the buyer makes the payment. I have a visual. Stay with me. The mortgage remains in the seller's name. The buyer gets the deed or the title to the property. Payment goes directly to the lender, the current lender, usually by the buyer. What? It's subject to that existing financing. That's why it's called sub to. We call it sub to, but it's subject to. A seller can be relieved of making payments without going through a traditional sale or the actual process. And that relief would be in me taking over the mortgage. Sub twos are great because, first of all, it doesn't have any out of pocket. Sub twos are really, really good. So the key distinction between a subject to is the buyer takes over. So that will be me or you, the potential investor. The buyer takes over the payments, but the loan stays in the seller's name. Okay. So I go to 123 Main Street. I meet with someone. I say, hey, we come to a meeting of the minds. I'll buy this project. I'll buy this property subject to. So the subject to is subject to the existing mortgage. Of course, you have to look at the mortgage. I mean, I can break it down for you step by step. The assumption is that the buyer, which is me and you, officially assumes the mortgage with the lender's approval. Now, why would someone do that? Well, first of all, before we get into the why, let's break it down how a sub to works step by step. There are several steps to why a person will want to do this. Why would I want to give my house to someone? There's a lot of reasons. I'll give you 4. When you are out there looking for deals and you happen to come across a motivated seller, okay? Sellers need to be motivated regardless of, what's going on. If they're not motivated, then none of these reasons will matter to them. Sub to, they wouldn't even know anything about it. You have to educate a seller about what a subject to is. Number 1, a motivated seller who is open to a sub to could be having financial distress. Trust me. They could be relocating and they're not going to sell their home. I mean, it may need work. They know they can't sell it on the market. There's a lot of reasons. They might have inherited the property and they really don't know what to do with it. They just want, they really don't want to know. They don't know what to do with it. I know you're saying is that impossible? Yes, it happens. It happens because they might be out of state. Okay. They're not even thinking. They're coming back to inherit grandma's house. The fourth reason is that they could be trying to avoid foreclosure, right? So when you do that, there's a lot of things you need to look into, okay? You want to evaluate that mortgage as well. The interest rate, the balance, remaining terms, any due on sale clauses. Due on sale clauses. Due on sale clause. If ownership of the property changes, the bank can require a full mortgage payment balance before it's asked to be paid immediately. If they have any due on clauses, okay? If they have any, just read through the papers. If ownership of the property changes, the bank, can require the full mortgage balance to be paid immediately if there are any due on case. It's a possibility. This does require a little bit more awareness, but again, if you've never done a sub 2, tomorrow might not be the day for you to say, I'm going to do a sub 2. Get some guidance on this. The third reason is you can negotiate with the seller, discuss taking over the payments, explain they may remain legally responsible. They are going to remain legally responsible, okay? But you're handling the payments. They get relief without foreclosure risk. So if they're behind 2-3 months, you catch that mortgage up. See, that's part of you taking over the payment. So this does require you to have some cash on your own if you're dealing with a foreclosure situation, okay? If they're current and they just inherited, that's something different. But if you are dealing with someone that's in a foreclosure, be prepared to have some but it's not the same out-of-pocket expense that you would have if you were traditionally buying a property. Because, we as investors, if it's not our primary home, it is 20% down, right? Okay. Now, you want to make sure, once again, you get some legal help to draft a purchase agreement, okay? Property sold, and you put it in there, subject to existing mortgage. Terms of the payments is going to be defined in it. Any down payment or seller carry back arrangements. Now, what are carry back arrangements? So this is why I wanted to do a 2-part on this, because there's a lot of terminology that comes with this creative financing. Carry back arrangements is this. The seller carries a loan for the buyer, and the buyer makes the monthly payment directly to the seller. That's all. It's just a fancy term, but I wanted to explain that to you. The title transfer. Deed transfers to the buyer. Buyer now legally owns the property. Mortgage stays in the seller's name. You're saying, is that possible? Yes, it is possible. Okay. I'll do a visual on this one too. Let me pull it up. Okay. So you start making payments. The buyer is taking over that mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, PITI. In this case, it's the state of New Jersey, PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Okay. So PITI is part of it. All right. And then also you want to make sure you put in an exit strategy. If you want to rent to own this property, you could do that too. Just like the principal and interest was going into the seller financing that we talked about, you can do a rent to own. You want to refinance it and pay off the original mortgage. That's also an option. And sell for profit after your equity grows in it as well. These are all your different exit strategies as well. Okay, because you're not behind in a mortgage anymore. This property can have something, you can give the seller something towards the end. This is all negotiable. Okay, now there are advantages. There are advantages to subject to deals. There are definitely. First of all, they're low or no money down. And often you're just covering the closing costs, right? No need to qualify for a new loan, right? Useful if the buyer has poor credit, right? If you have poor credit, this is one way you buy a property. faster closing. There's no bank underwriting requirement, so you can skip over that. And then, of course, potential for immediate positive cash flow, especially if the rent covers the mortgage payments. That's really the best opportunity to acquire below market value. So motivated sellers may accept less, because remember, they have a lot of reasons to be even doing what they're doing, but there are also risks and challenges on this, right? So we want to talk about not fear monger, but we want to be able to mitigate. That's what we do. We want to mitigate the risk, understand the risk, recognize the risk, not fear the risk. So that's what we're doing. So when it comes to risk and challenges on doing a sub-2, due on sale clause, that's one of the risks there. Most mortgages have a clause allowing the lender to call the loan if the property changed hands. So this is a possibility that it can happen. In practice, banks rarely enforce this unless payments are late or the ownership is transferred fraudulently. Remember, we are not doing this fraudulently. So, but it can. There's always that can possibility. So I want to put it out there that there's a possibility that you could. Now, there's also the seller liability too. The mortgage is still in the seller's name, right? So if the buyer, you and I, the buyer, we fail to pay it, it affects the seller's credit, not ours, right? So there's that liability for the seller. Now, the insurance and taxes, again, if you're in a state where it's not included, buyer must ensure that the property is insured and that taxes are paid, even though the loan is in the seller's name, right? So it would be prudent for you guys to sit down and have a conversation. How much is the insurance annually on the house? How much is the tax? Is it covered in the mortgage? These will be conversations that you will be having, but these are the risks and challenges that you want to be able to recognize up front. Now, also, an exit strategy that's really important, that you know what your exit strategy is going to be. The buyer may need to refinance, right? Or we need to pay off the original mortgage eventually. So I want to give you a real life example of a property. Let me share my screen, because this is really, really a good opportunity for you to get the visual of what I am talking about. All right, so let me open it up. How are you guys doing tonight? I mean, I'm sipping my ginger tea. Oops. What am I doing? Okay, here we go. No, that's not what I want to share. Stop. It is actually, which file? Here it is, the sub-2. All right, so here's the sub-2. All right, so just based on definition, let me just scroll back up so you'll see it. Subject to. So this is another creative financing. As I share with you, subject to. Subject to is a deal when a buyer purchases a property subject to the existing financing. That's really what it is. The buyer takes control of the property without officially assuming the mortgage. The loan stays in the seller's name, but the buyer makes the payment. All right, so here's my example. So subject to is a 2-family house in Jersey City. The property details: the market value is $400,000. The mortgage balance is $250,000 at 5%. The seller's motivation is moving out of state, can't keep up with the payments, just want to be gone, which is cool. The deal we put together: the buyer offers to take over the payments, subject to the existing mortgage. The buyer puts down $5,000 to cover the closing costs. The financials of this mortgage is very simple. The mortgage payments are $1,500 a month. Buyer rents each unit for $1,800 a month, rent it out, right? That's giving you $3,600 a month in total income. The cash flow is $3,600 minus $1,500, giving you $2,100 before expenses. Because the $1,500 was the mortgage payment. Now, this is not today's day. This was moons ago, but I'm giving you an example that's easy enough for you to understand. Okay. The outcome, the seller is relieved of making that $1,500 payment, avoids his credit damage. The buyer controls the property with positive cash flow and potential equity growth. That's simple. I mean, it is that simple. We don't have to complicate it, but that's really all it is. I know I gave you a very simple example, but that is really how it goes. It doesn't require much more than that. That is the outcome. That is all that is required in a sub 2. That's it. I know I made it simple, but that's the reality of it. You're just taking over that person's loan subject to their existing loan. And many people are happy with this situation. Many, many people. So in that real life example, the buyer can refinance in 2-3 years when their credit improves and the market conditions are favorable, and there you go. I mean, easy peasy. Now, there are some strategies that I want you to, if you're taking notes, write this down. You want to screen the sellers carefully. I mean, that goes without saying, but you really do. You want to see if they're really motivated and do they understand the risk? I mean, because you don't want someone wasting your time and you don't want to waste anyone else's time. And you always want to do a title search, right? Confirm that there are no liens on that property to surprise you, right? That's really important. And then you want to keep mortgage payments current, right? It's going to protect your credit and the seller's credit. And have a backup plan. Know your refinance and know your reset options. Use a trust or an LLC, of course, right? You're not buying this in your own name. I always tell you that. Do not, it helps with privacy and also risk management. No one should be buying a property under his or her own name. Okay. I mean, it just doesn't make sense if you're going to be an investor. In this one particular scenario, this is a property that I lived in, but at the same time, you can still buy under an LLC or a trust. That's a different subject for a different day. But if you're not living in that property, you really should not be buying it in your own name anyway. Now, we talked about 2 different types of financing tonight. We talked about seller financing and we talked about subject to. Now, if you had to pick and choose one or the other, which one would you be comfortable doing if you had the right mentorship, if you had the right strategy? Which one sounds more doable to you? Does it sound like seller financing or does it sound like sub 2? I'll give you my personal take on it. When I first learned about seller financing and sub 2 seemed a little more complex for me. It really did. If I have to be honest about it, it was a little complex to understand. But as I got more and more comfortable with it, as with everything else, it got easier. But I also have to tell you that sub 2s work a little bit better outside of New Jersey, if I have to be honest with you, just because payments are much more favorable outside of New Jersey. Our taxes alone is a mortgage note, but seller financing is something that is really, really good. I had an opportunity to take a look at seller financing in Newark, New Jersey. And you'll be surprised. You can actually go out on all the investor websites and, even take a look at, properties. You might even see seller financing is being offered, especially on a commercial properties, 6 units or more. It's very, very popular. So I would say if you want to learn more about sub 2s and you want to learn more about what is it that we do at She Rises Academy, I mentioned to you earlier that we are at the tail end of our session, and the next session starts December 4th. These are the type of trainings and mentorships that we're affording. There'll be other coaches joining me next session. Our cohort 2 starts December 4th. you have an opportunity to get in on the ground floor. Now, I do have one other lending option for you, creative financing for you tonight, and that's partnerships and private lenders. Now, here's what I love about partnering with other investors. It works similarly to what we talked about, but in a different kind of way, because now you're not taking over any property, you're just partnering. So partnering with other investors, which I have done, I've actually partnered with other general contractors, and I was the person that managed the project. So it's the same thing, because it was actually the general contractor that bought the property, had multiple properties that he was running at the same time. So I became the project manager so I can learn it as well. And we had a 70-30 split. Let me share with you how it works. You team up with one or more investors who have capital, but they lack the time and the knowledge. Remember, we talked about real estate. There's three things that you need. You either have time, knowledge, or money. If you have all three, great. If you don't, you have one of the three, two out of three, then it's all part of what you can negotiate. So if that person has, time, that's great. And you have the knowledge, that's fine. Or he has the money and you have the time, either way. Or you have a desire to manage the property. In my case, it was a desire to manage the project from beginning to end. I wanted to learn a whole lot about the business. And so therefore, I was willing to do that. You give what they call sweat equity, right? You can be the one to find the deal, you manage it, you handle all the renovations while your partner provides the funds. That's a perfect partnership, okay? Because that person just wants to make sure, do you know how to manage a project? You might not be managing the money, but you have to make sure that you're managing the budget, you're managing the contractors, you're staying on time, and it all makes sense that he or she is trusting you with that. And in my case, I was trusted. I was a trusted partner with my general contractor. So I was managing the project from beginning to end. I was managing his workers. I was managing everything from making sure we have materials, making sure that we were on track, making sure that there was no wastefulness, making sure that no one was taking things off of site that didn't belong. So it was a job. It was a job, but it was a well-rewarding job. The common structure I recommend is this: equity split. Okay. Equity split is really, really good. Profits are divided based on each partner's contribution. So in my case, it was 70% to my money partner and 30% to me, the manager. Now, 30%, listen, pigs get eaten. Don't be greedy. After all, you had nothing in here but your sweat and equity and your learning. So 30% of something beats 30% of nothing. So get started. I'm not saying beggars are choosy. It's the way for you to get started. After all, it didn't cost you anything. So just be grateful that you were even allowed to be in the space. Because now, guess what? You can take that 30% and add it to your portfolio as one of your projects that you've managed. So when you do end up doing your own project, the first thing a money lender may ask you in hard money is, have you done any projects before? You can absolutely, unequivocally, without any argument, say yes. And they'll ask you about the project. They'll look it up. Oh, yeah. So yeah, I was the project manager, but 30% was my return on investment. Wink, wink. You're welcome. Now, the benefits. What are the benefits? There's always the benefits. There's always pros and cons. The benefits of working at this way is no personal cash needed up front, right? You gain experience, the credibility, and the risk. The risk is shared between you and a person. Now, you can also have, besides another common structure, besides equity split, you can have a silent partner. One investor provides all the cash, but has little or no involvement. Those are great. I've not had that, but I think it's great. The active partner, which is you're managing the project. So that's perfect for someone that doesn't want the responsibility. They just want to make sure that, you're investing the money wisely. Now, some things for you to take under consideration is clear agreements are so critical. This is, again, not a napkin agreement. This is an agreement that you want to make sure that it is written and contracts outlining each person's responsibilities, the profit and the exit strategy. And of course, trust and communication are key to avoiding conflicts. If something didn't go right that day and it's big enough that it's keeping you up, then you really, really, really should communicate it to your money person. Let them know, hey, you know what? I think we underestimated the budget on the kitchen. After we opened up the wall, we realized there was a pipe leak there. We may need to come up with an additional $2,000 because now we need a master plumber to come on site. That's transparency. That is communication. So it's better that you communicate it sooner than later. That's really what I'm talking about. So you could avoid these conflicts. You don't want to just let it go. And then he's like, well, we're over budget. And you say, well, I had to hire a master plumber and you didn't tell him. That individual is not going to be happy with you. So be very transparent in your communication. Make sure that you are trusted. Now, another type of lender that we have are private lenders, are friends and family. I know I didn't have any of my family, but some people do. Some people do. And we have developed friends down the line who are private lenders. I now have friends that are private lenders, so I can speak on friends, but I still can't speak on family. All right, how it works is very similar. So you borrow the money from the individual who is acting like your bank, who want a return on their funds, right? Everyone's going to be looking for ROI. This could be a friend, it could be a family member, an investor who lends money at a set interest rate. Now, their interest rate is going to be lower than a bank, lower than a hard money lender, right? But they're still looking for a return on their investment. And it's usually secured by the actual property that you're fixing up, okay? It doesn't matter if you're going to fix and flip, fix and hold. It's secured by real estate, okay? Just remember that. Now, there are several arrangements. Yes, you can use hard money, but I don't want to bring in hard money in here. Hard money is a separate conversation. They are considered to some as private lenders because they're not traditional like banks or credit union. But I don't want to bring them in. Family and friends, okay? They can have lower interest rates, flexible repayment terms. And again, a formal agreement is essential. Just because it could be a family member doesn't mean that you do not want that person, to not have it in writing. You still want to consider a business transaction to be in writing that's solid, that there's no disputes in what position you play and what positions they play. Okay. Note purchase also. Sometimes a private lender may take ownership by saying, instead of just lending money, they might, similar to the partnering, they want to take a position in the note. So that's called note purchase. So that's another one. A private lender may take ownership that way. Okay. So just know that. But it's all part of negotiation. Now, there are benefits. It's quick cash. It's faster. The terms are very flexible compared to banks. And the funds, the deals, these type of funds sometimes are deals that banks won't fund, is what I'm trying to tell you. So again, now some things for you to consider when we're talking about private lending. The interest rates may be higher than traditional loans, okay? And always formalize your agreements and protect your relationships. And of course, lenders typically expect repayment on schedule. You don't want to risk your personal relationships because a deal went bad. So you want the doors to remain open so that you can come back to borrow more and do more. Okay. So here's a couple things I want to share with you. You don't need your own cash. If you can bring value in other ways, like knowledge, effort, and management skills, and connect with people who have capital, but they either lack the time or the expertise or desire to manage the investment, that's a win for you. It's a win for you. So if you were looking for funding today, who would you approach first? A family friend, a family member, or just someone random? All right. It's just the question that I had. I mean, I'm curious because, again, I shared with you, I didn't have any family to lend me any money. Now, the way you pitch is also very important. You're not begging for anything. We come across when we present deals to people is we're offering solutions. I like to consider myself to be a solution expert. We're offering solutions that's mutually beneficial to the both of us. Now, how do you structure that? You want to show the deal, show the numbers, and show the potential returns. Just like I showed you, my sub two, just like I showed you my seller financing. Same thing when you're asking for it. You want to show I'm buying for this amount. The after return value is this. I know here's our profit. And you want to show why it's a low risk to that investor. This is in a emerging market. So much is happening here. Here's the properties that have sold. Here's the comparables that I've looked at that are identical to ours after our property is fixed up. We can yield these same type of profits and these same type of return on investment because this is what's been on the market. Days on the market makes a difference as well. So all of that, you're bringing that expertise to him. And you want to highlight how incredible you are and how much you really understand this business. Okay. So for sure. So how do you script this? How do you present this to a stranger, as I have oftentimes? I wouldn't say a stranger, someone I've built a relationship with over a period of time. I say like this. I have a deal that could earn you X ROI over Y months. Here's how we structure it. Okay. That's a very, very plausible sentence because you'll fill in the X and the Y. You'll break down based on all the things I just shared with you. Very, very plausible. So there are so many other creative funding strategies that we can cover at a different time. I won't cover them tonight, but let me just plant the seed upon you. Lease options, credit lines, and home equity is where you can get funding idea, to get money for funding ideas as well. Joint ventures, again, I mentioned that with other investors. So you want to make sure that you are not leaving yourself out of this business strictly because you weren't able to think out the box. And another thing, I want you to keep some of the common mistakes to avoid, stuff that many may overlook. Go to YouTube University and think you can do this on your own. Not true. This takes some skills. It takes some requirements, some learning, but I digress. I don't want you to, number one, over leverage or skip over a contract. Do not skip over the contract. Always make sure you get professional guidance, either from an attorney or a CPA, when it comes down to either structuring your creative financing for a subject to or seller financing. Also, if you're borrowing money from a private lender, be honest with your partners and your lenders. Transparency builds trust. We do not ever want to be distrustful. As I prepare to close with you this evening, I just want to share with you that what's one creative financing strategy you can explore this week. I want you to drop it. If you're watching on a replay, it's okay. You can let me know what is one of what you heard today. What is one? Now, if you want to learn more about structuring deals, your first deal or your 10th deal, schedule a complimentary one-on-one with me at coachgladys.com. You don't want to miss the next step towards building your wealth. I'm telling you, we are finishing up this next week. Actually, it's tomorrow. We're finishing up so strong. And then we're taking a 2-week hiatus, just to let you know. And then we will resume in December. And I look forward to not only you joining me, I look forward to seeing what is it that you're going to structure over the next. Are you the next one that's going to be coming in and telling me, instead of doing this, I'm doing that? I can't wait to see your achievement. I can't wait to see what all you are going to accomplish. But don't wait. Don't hesitate. I look forward to seeing you in class. It has been my pleasure to share with you Women Wealth Wednesday. Make it a great evening. I'll see you next week.